Hello and welcome to Mastering Substance Designer for Beginners. My name is Csabi Kalányos and I will be your instructor throughout this course. Before diving in, I want to say a few words about myself. I am a self-taught artist, passionate about computer graphics. I love to learn new things, and I recently started a YouTube channel where I share my techniques and workflows. This is a beginner-friendly course. However, you should have some basic knowledge of Designer before you can take on it. First, let's take a look at the general idea behind this project. The main source of inspiration for this project was a scan texture I saw on ArtStation. And I'm gonna open up PureRef, which is an application where you can gather your references, and you can easily find it with a search on Google. This image was my main source of inspiration. My goal wasn't to exactly replicate this, but to create something similar with the well-balanced, visually interesting areas and rest areas. Let me show you what I mean by that. Visually interesting areas are these areas where there is something happening. I have a higher frequency of elements there, and usually this is where the viewer's eyes get attracted as soon as he sees the image. Rest areas are the parts of the image where there isn't much going on. These are less busy areas, like I have the bigger tiles here. Balancing these two well is a key element in the process of getting a good looking final image. Now let's get into Designer and set up the viewport. This is what you get when you open up Substance Designer. I am gonna go ahead and create a new graph. And I choose the metallic roughness template and leave everything else as default. I am gonna undock both the 3D and 2D views. Let me bring this in. And you can adjust these windows to your preferences. The second thing that I do when entering Designer is to set up my output node. So let's go ahead and do that. Click anywhere in the graph and press the Tab key to bring up your search menu and search for the invert grayscale node. I use this node as a placeholder. It won't actually do anything besides keeping my connection lines in one place. And for this node to do nothing, I'm gonna go to the Properties tab and change this to false. From this node I will have 3 connections. One goes to the normal. Let me delete these 2 nodes. Now I need an ambient occlusion. I'm gonna connect it here. The second connection goes to the ambient occlusion and the third one to the height. As a personal preference, I am going to increase the exposure at the 3D view because it is too dark for me. So I'm gonna click here and go to the environment, edit, and I'm gonna set this to 0.5. There is one more thing which I wanna do to increase the visibility, and that is to go here to the uniform color. I'm gonna change this to grayscale. Let me zoom in here in the 3D view so you can see the difference. And I'm gonna increase this value a bit. Next, I'm gonna move this 2D view and I wanna go up at this I letter and I will choose display timings. And this will display the computational time for each node. And I want to see the computational time because I want to avoid nodes that are too heavy, or at least disable them from time to time so I can get a faster viewport. Here is where you will see the computational time a bit later. We have a couple more things to set up at the 3D view, but before that, let's create the base shape for the tiles so we have something to visualize. Let me move this 2D view back where it was. I'm gonna hit tab and bring in a tile sampler. And if I take a look here at the properties, I have a square as pattern, which is what I want. And I want to change the X and Y values to 30 by 30, which is basically the amount of tiles I want. And now I have something to visualize, so let's connect this to the output node and do the last tweaks for the 3D view. I will change the preview mesh to a plane, IRS. And I'm going to add some tessellation by going to the materials, default, Adobe Standard Material, and tessellation. For this specific project, I'm going to choose a scale of 3. And I'm going to raise the tessellation factor all the way up. Let me zoom into the 3D view so I have a better preview. For the base shape of the tiles, there is one more thing I would like to do, and that is to adjust the scale. So I'm going to double click the tile sampler. In order to get a realistic joint spacing, I will type in 0.985. I found this ratio to look convincing enough. I want to have a better preview in the 3D window, so I'm going to zoom in and holding Shift, Control and the right click, I can change the sun's position. I like to have it coming from the front so I can see things better. And because of the nature of this project, which is about debris and broken pieces, I will already start to create the first cracks. The easiest way to do that in Designer is by using the Voronoi patterns that we get from the cells nodes. In this case, I am using the cells tree. Let me make some room here and bring in the cells tree. And what I want to do here is to blend these patterns onto my tiles. So I will bring in a blend node and I will connect the cells tree to the top input and the tile sampler will go to the bottom. And in order to visualize this in the 3D view, I'm going to hold down Shift and drag this output here to the blend node. Now I want to change the blending mode to min darken. And what this blending mode does is that it is keeping the lower values from each input. So we have the black values from both the cells and the tile sampler. I want to do some tweaks to the cells tree. I want to have these lines more prominent. So I'm going to go here and increase the hardness all the way up. And I will also reduce the scale to 3. And if we take a look at these cracks, they are too uniform without any undulation. So I'm gonna try and warp these lines. Let me zoom out and I need to make some more space here. I will also move the cells tree. And I'm gonna hit tab and bring in a multi-directional warp. And I need something to feed in at the intensity input here. And for that I'm gonna use a Klaus 2 noise. Another way to create connections in Substance Designer would be to drag an input or an output and just release it anywhere, and this will open up the search menu. I'm gonna search for Klaus 2. Before I go any further, I wanna change the resolution to 4K so I have a better preview of what I'm doing. So I'm going up to the parent size and choose 4K. With this warp node, I want to change the mode to chain so I get rid of these lines. I'm going to choose 2 directions and I will reduce the intensity as I don't want to get too much undulation. Now I like to have more of these cracks, but I want to keep the same scale, so I'm not going to increase the scale of the cells node. What I can do here is to bring in a transform 2D node. I'm going to move this up. And I will also bring in a blend node. And connect the cells tree here. And connect it into the transform also. For the blending mode, I'm going to choose min darken again. I will connect this to the multi-directional warp. And now if I go to this transform 2D node, I zoom out. I will rotate this. And I'm also going to move it a bit. What we did here was to create another instance of the cells tree node without duplicating it. I'm gonna arrange these nodes, and if I select these connections and I press X, this will reverse their position. So far, these cracks look unnatural, and that is because they continue uniformly from tile to tile. And I want to break down this uniformity and make each tile have its own distinct pattern. So I duplicate the tile sampler that we have here by pressing Ctrl D. And here are the properties. I'm going to increase the color random to about 0.9. Next, I need a vector warp. Let me move these nodes again. And I'm going to connect the multi-directional warp to the vector warp. And if I connect the tile sampler here, you can see we get this red line. And this means that these connections are not compatible the way they are. And all I'm going to do is to select this line and I'm going to bring in a gradient map. Let me reduce the intensity of the vector warp. And I'm going to connect this to the blend node. So when I increase the intensity here, you can see these lines are moving in multiple directions, and this is what I want. This looks much more natural than before. Now that we have the first layer of cracks, I'm gonna take the Clouds 2 noise and move it up here. And I'm gonna right click and add a frame. Call it Clouds 2. I moved this node here because I want to be able to find it more easily so I can reuse it later. And reusing nodes is one way to optimize graphs in Designer. And this is because having multiple instances of the same node makes your PC to unnecessarily recalculate something that has been computed before. So instead of doing that, we just draw multiple connections from a single node. There is one more thing which I want to do to keep my graph organized. I'm going to hold down Alt and click anywhere on this line to add a dot. And I will right click and add a comment here. Name it Clouds 2. This way, later down the road, when the graph gets busier, I will know what do I have at the input without going back in the graph to search for the node that was connected there. Now if I take a look at these two tile samplers, and if I compare the computational time to the other nodes, it is very clear that the tile sampler is a heavy node, so I'm gonna do a trick, and instead of having two tile samplers, I'm gonna keep just one. So let me drag a connection from here, and I'm gonna search for the threshold node. This threshold node will increase the contrast from the tile sampler, and as you can see in the 2D view, we get the same result like we have at the first tile sampler. If you compare the computational times, you can see how much a difference there is. So I'm going to hold down Shift and reroute this to the threshold node. And now I can get rid of this. Now that I have the first layer of cracks, I'm gonna make some space here and create the second layer. I'm gonna duplicate all of these nodes and I will add a dot here. And I want to blend this on top of the first layer. So I'm gonna create some more space here, and I will bring in a blend node. As blending mode, choose min darken again. And holding Shift, I'm gonna reroute the output. For the second layer of cracks, I want a smaller scale, so I'm going up to the cells tree and increase this to 7. And I want to get rid of this tile sampler because it is too heavy. What I can do here is to drag a connection from the first tile sampler. So let me make some space here. I'm gonna hold down Alt, drag a connection here, press Alt again to create another dot, and I'm gonna connect this to the gradient map. Now I can delete this. I'm gonna press right click and add a comment here. label this as tile sampler. I think I want a different seed for this tile sampler, so what I can do is to bring in a transform 2D node. And I'm gonna rotate this 90 degrees. So because I have different grayscale values here, the vector warp will push the cracks in different directions compared to the first layer of cracks. In order to create a ratio which is more pleasing to the human eye, I am gonna make the second layer of cracks appear only in certain areas. For this I will need a mask, so let me bring in a histogram select. And because we have a variety of grayscale values here, with the help of the histogram select, I can filter some values and make the cracks affect only these filtered areas. I'm gonna bring the contrast all the way up. I'm gonna connect this to the blend node. And I think I'm gonna increase the range a bit. I'm gonna frame this and call it mask of second layer of cracks. Next up, I want to add one more layer of cracks, so I will duplicate all of these nodes. For the clouds 2 node, I'm going to create another dot here. I am going to reconnect the blend here. And I don't need another seed, so I can just use the previous transform 2D node. So I'm going to hold down Alt and connect this here and press the Alt button. And this will place a dot here. And using the Shift, I can reroute everything here. Now I can delete this. I want to see this in the 3D view, so I'm gonna hold down Shift again and reroute everything to the third blend node. I am constantly arranging these nodes. I think I'm gonna move this tile sampler down here and frame all these. This will be layer 1 of cracks. This will be layer 2 of cracks. The last one is layer 3. I'm gonna change the mask label also. Here at the third layer of cracks, all I'm gonna do is to change the seed of the cells tree node. And I'm also gonna do some tweaks to the mask of it. By changing the position, I can get another seed for the mask. And I can also play with the range to get more or less. And with this one, we finished the third layer of cracks. All I am gonna do here is to create some more space.